Welcome back to Beautiful Mind. Thank you to all my viewers and subscribers. If you're new here, I'm Roland Attenborough. I'm the leading GAN scientific and forecasting and analytical researcher. Today we're talking about Fibonacci and what that will bring to us if we pay attention to all the tools that are laid out for us. Let's just go ahead and let's just make this a little nicer. I want to point out that my storm gain site is no longer active and they don't take Canadian clients. I'm on my NiceHash site. This is where I mine all my Bitcoin to trade it. This site only has 4 years worth of data going back to December 26, 2019. However, if you look back at my blockchain halving events in my previous tutorials, where I have a Stormgain account there, we talk about what happens at the blockchain halving events. And if you've been paying attention to any of the work that I'm doing with Bitcoin here, you'll note that the blockchain halving event happened in 2020, happened in early May there. And we had this great big capitulation here. So what I wanted to point out today is coming into the next year where we have a blockchain halving event, I am very much expecting that we have a pullback like this to this level. And we're going to talk about this moving forward here. So the safest time to buy Bitcoin, in my opinion, is a couple of months before a blockchain halving event, or a month before, or a month after, or a few months after, whichever way you want to look at this. But after these events happen, Bitcoin never comes back and touches these levels again. So let's just take a look at it moving forward here in our Fibonacci sequence. And if you're not setting your charts up that way, then you should maybe consider doing that, because you might be missing something if you're not putting your tools on correctly. So let's just go take a look at our Fibonacci. So we've taken our wave count from our Fibonacci, and we've taken it from our last bottom here on this July, and we've ran it up and we've topped it out at our first pullback to the 50% level here, where we had this really good snapback. So the sine wave was set, and in between these thinner lines is the sine wave. Now with Fibonacci, the sequences can grow, and in that we see that we have extension lines that run up, and this is the 1.618 level. And at this level here, this level is holding Bitcoin. And this is the next area where you can expect to have a tremendous pullback or a hold or a resistance level. And if we look at this extension line, we can see that this extension line has run up to this top here and has subsequently been held back. And then you can see that a pullback has in fact ensued. And if you look at it, we've really come back quite low into this area here of the shadowing blue. So this is a very strong area here. So we bounced off of this area and we again touched this area. And this again is a sidereal 9-hour count where we touch this line. Another 9-hour sidereal count, if you go look, happens right here. That's right, the next move down. So in our Fibonacci sequence, we moved down really aggressively here. And we sat down on the 17,000 last year. And you go look back at my tutorials, I was speaking about this 17,000 and how I felt that it wasn't quite the bottom and we would probably be moving lower or much lower. So in that, we have moved across. And when we get into these bands, if you look back at my other Fibonacci sequence several months ago, whenever we get into the middle of a band here, we can get some resistance levels. So this blue line we could really say represents this area here and moves down and creates quite an area where we would have this breakout area right in the middle of this band. So it's important that we look at these levels. Now, further to that, once we did bottom out around this 15 level, and it's quite possible that 15,000 is our market bottom for now. We may be revisiting this. However, if stocks and the dollar don't recover, or most likely the dollar, because the dollar and Bitcoin have an inverse relationship. So when the United States dollar is up in value, Bitcoin is down in value. So when Bitcoin is up in value, the US dollar is down in value. So that being said, once we broke out of this line, and we're going to talk about this blue line like we did in the last tutorial, this here is a line that gets revisited every time Bitcoin comes down, makes a bottom, breaks above. Now, it's interesting to point out that when we broke above this area here, we came back and we sat down again on this line. And it's no coincidence that this blue Fibonacci line held us here, held us again here, was our breakout and channel top here, and subsequently we did come back to it twice more. Are we going to come back a third time? It's very possible and likely. If Bitcoin doesn't get a good grip, we could certainly come back down, and we're going to talk about that. But first, before we continue on with my bad news bears, our interim look at the market cycle is that we are to now move up. It's very possible that into this October, November, I was talking about this October, we're going to get some kind of a pullback push. And it's likely that by this November period here, this is the election on the 3rd, and this is 43,000. This area represents an old top here, and this is a big top. And I think that we have a shot at November. By November 3rd or the very late part of October, we can have a move up to this area. We could suffer a reaction after this point, and somewhere around the end of November, from the 19th to the end of November, we could get a good pullback. We could come back to this 30,000 or drop back further depending on how it reacts at these levels. Further to that, we've been talking about this blockchain halving event that's going to take place. If we were to experience some weakness up here at the end of the year, I would think that we would be pulling back and subsequently be falling off, and maybe we could be revisiting this 15,000 here back in March, this March 11th. We could be back at 15,000, and that would certainly satisfy me for a bottom. Does that necessarily mean that will happen that way? Well, no, not necessarily. We've been speaking about these levels, and if we come back to this 15,000 level here, this would represent a really good area for us to buy. If we could hold this, then I think the next sequence out would bring us up to the 61 level. It's possible. You know, is that really going to happen? Well, not necessarily. We're not sure yet whether or not this top is going to be our overhead resistance yet. Because if we can't make it over top of this 31.8 and sit on this, my whole forecast is invalid. And I was speaking to you back that by the 11th and 12th of July, that we should be up at this 34,000 and be starting to make our way up. We have not done that yet. So it made me very nervous that we are still in a sideways channel. And this channel is from this area here to this area here. So we could subsequently still have a major pullback here by the 26th. If we were to do that and come back to this 25,000 here, which is 135 degrees from 34, and subsequently 90 degrees from our old top at 31 here to our 25, this would represent a buy if it held these levels. So we're going to be watching for this, because coming up here, we have some very significant areas where we have resistance, and it's this 31. This 31.8 here, don't buy Bitcoin unless it sits on top of this. Do not buy it. It's a fake out. So we're waiting for the strength to return. We're waiting for a breakout here inside this month here. And if not, then by the end of this month, it has to reveal something going on about the direction. And if that's the case, then we might be just moving down. Are we going to move down on this red line? Well, it's possible we chase it down and do a little dump down like this. So it's possible we just sit down here, like I'm saying, and by the end of August, even into October, because I've been talking about the 6th of October to about the mid 16th. If we were to lose this area here, you can be sure that it's Humpty Dumpty, and we could go down. If we were to hold this, we could return, and we could be back up to these old tops at our election time. And we could be up to, like I was saying, possibly 43. Is that the case? Well, not necessarily. I mean, this is all conjecture. We're just watching the price action on our square, and we're watching it really closely, because right now it's starting to look like we are, in fact, going to have some action here. And you can see from our, we'll just bring these forward a little bit here so we can see better. Now you can see here we keep getting these fake outs right here, where we get these crosses, that these golden crosses, and I've been talking about them. We have to have these golden crosses for us to have a breakout and sit back on top of 31. If that is not to occur, my whole forecast and sequence is null and void. It will definitely not unfold, as I've been saying. So we'll just pay attention to that. So for now, we're stating that the highest we can go is somewhere in this area, where if we connect these two areas here, it's not looking great. We would have to get above this area here and sit on this for us to move up to this area by November, by our election, which will be November 3rd. And that represents 43,000, or just under. So keep in mind that this is a very tumultuous year, and the country is undergoing a lot of financial stress and a lot of political duress. So It's possible that Bitcoin does make it up to there before having another pullback, maybe down into the 31 level by this February period. And by the time we reach our blockchain halving event, we could bounce off of this level here again and then be moving back up. So I just wanted to point out those things here and why I feel that way using the indicators and that we need. I mean, we need to see this getting positive and move up to that. So peace and love to y'all. Safe trading. Use a stop loss. Get ready. We're approaching some dangerous territory. We're still in this. If we're to be rejected from this area, it would be a major Humpty Dumpty. So make sure you use a stop loss. If our sequence continues and we break above 31.8, we have to sit on this. That would be somewhat a safe place to buy. As Mr. Gann says, do not buy until it breaks above your old top and sits on it. When it sits on it, then it's in a very strong position. Peace and love, safe trading. Tear my tutorials to pieces, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you very much for joining us today. Peace and love.